Good morning, everyone. Catherine Cooke, founder of The Engine and leading business advisor, and we're live this morning talking about a topic that's been around a while, directors' responsibilities and transition for next generation leadership. Very topical considering most people start out in business and don't really know what their role is and responsibilities of being a director. I'm joined this morning with Andrew Skinner, Director of Urlich, Milne, and client's brother and sister, Cora and Chris Lawton, Directors of Steelpac Construction Group Limited. Good morning, all.
Morning. Morning, guys.
As you can see, they're saying good morning and we're sitting together. So we're trialing something very new this morning. So morning. I was really excited.
I'm feeling a bit left out.
What's that, Andrew?
I'm feeling a bit left out.
Well, we're feeling left out because you're sitting with a beautiful view behind you, which is very not what's happening outside right now. There's a tap upstairs that just keeps raining and raining and raining. So somebody needs to turn it off. Hey, how cool was it overnight to hear about 4-day week global featuring as in the top 100 of the most influential companies across the world for 4-day week global. I mean, that's just inspirational for Charlotte Lockhart and Andrew Barnes, who've been championing it across the world. Started here in New Zealand, and obviously Alexander PR, Dwayne and the team have been working really, really hard with them, but just really looking at that wellness across companies and whether we continue with this whole 5-day week that someone invented, or 6-day week many years ago, well, many decades, centuries ago, I should say. So did you read about it, Andrew?
No, I haven't. Sorry. Yeah.
Make sure you get it. It's got Kim Kardashian's front page. It should actually feature them on the front page. But anyway, just getting back on topic this morning. On a previous episode, we had Chris and Cora, and we were starting about how we actually kind of got to know each other, and it started with a conversation over the fence in Te Kofito with their sister, with another client that I was working with, Cambridge Home, and you guys were navigating working in business and obviously having sort of being on the tools, and then suddenly you're faced with this whole business, and so along came I on this Zoom and with you guys, and so look, Chris, we'll start with you first. In terms of Steelpac Construction Limited, how long have you worked in that business for?
So I've been in the business for 20 years. So my dad started the business over 35 years ago now. We started in agricultural, do a lot of poultry farms, and then we're moving to industrial work as well. So I pretty much started on the tools, been on the tools for 20 odd years until now. And it's just been a big learning curve coming from tools to director to owner of a business.
And in terms of the learning curve, I mean, you're talking around, obviously tools and then operational. We talked about that. The Chris and I've had the benefit of actually traveling around the countryside the last couple of days, and there's a lot of administration that goes with, being in operations, right?
A huge amount.
Yeah. But obviously that covers off, a lot of planning, and when you plan, then you're obviously mitigating that risk. As you can see also, he's done his corporate gear, both of them in their corporate gear, is Steelpac Construction. I'm feeling a bit left out. I should have worn my beanie this morning. Just talking with you, Cora, obviously it's a 35-year plus business, and reflecting from when we met, obviously over a year ago online. How do you feel about your responsibility as a director? Obviously you manage the fiscal management of the business with Cora at Walker Wayland. What did you not know that you've now implemented as best practices in terms of fiscal management?
I kind of did know, but I was just run ragged doing too many things. I didn't have the time to narrow down to get to what I needed to do in regards to fiscal management, and also just getting those numbers to the board. It was never really done in the past. Yeah. And it's been hard. There were just so many blowouts, I guess, on all these jobs and projects and everything that had never been allowed for in the past as well, to do with compliance. and meeting those, compliance, which are law, you can't change. So, yeah, big learning, and yeah, getting down to the numbers and being able to actually delve deep into them. Yeah.
Now, you'll see that I'm sitting in between them. It's not because they don't love each other, but we just thought I'd be there without having this uniform on. So, it's really, it's hard when you're family and you've got to have difficult conversations. And, these guys have really, I'm so proud of these guys in terms of what they've achieved. So, Chris, I'm going to come back to you. From you talk about being on the tools. I mean, that's a huge responsibility to go from being on the tools and then understanding what your duty at law as a director is, right?
Yes.
And keeping your workers safe. You and I worked hard at creating participation from employees and ensuring safety on site around compliance, wellness, and so much more. You want to talk to the people that are watching us about, what that looks like for your business now? What have you implemented in terms of making it much more compliant and you're getting sleep at night? Right?
Yeah. So basically, when we took over the company, there was health and safety structure, but none of it was complying, or no one was doing it. Very, very limited. Our clients couldn't see what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to pretty much break it right down to basics, start from scratch again. So toolboxes, everything became digitalized to help on site, so there's not paperwork laying around and all loaded into a system. The toolboxes were actually being filled out and completed and passed on to our clients, and our clients are very happy with that. They can see the broad spectrum of what's going on site. And all inspections, everything is everyone can see. So everyone full visibility of our health and safety on all sites across the board, across New Zealand.
And I guess really what Chris is saying is they were doing health and safety and they were compliant, but a lot of it was ticking boxes, whereas now we've got full participation from employees who are getting fully involved and actually having a voice at the table. We've got near misses being reported and people actually understanding that there's not going to be any retribution around it. It's actually a learning and an opportunity. And whilst we don't want to have near misses, it's part and parcel of learning and ensuring that we, don't have, a rock that sits there that somebody falls over and someone else falls over and no one removes the rock, and we've got task analysis being done in terms of actually assessing a situation before we go into it, and site inspections, identifying, the great stuff and where opportunities lie. So it's really, really actually lifted so much that your client said and has repeatedly said over the last few months, he can sleep well at night. And for us, that's fantastic. I mean, you can sleep well at night,
Yes.
but from a client's perspective. Andrew, I'm sorry to keep you waiting in the wings there. You and I both see and work with many company owners around directors' responsibilities, and it's kind of still interesting about how many people still sort of go and set up a company in a company's office, but never actually understand what it is that they're actually responsible for. When I talk to people, I still feel, Andrew, that there's a she'll be right attitude. What conversations do you have with business owners over their director's responsibilities, especially around mitigating risk?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I don't know whether the role of director is that widely understood, especially in small, medium-sized businesses, of which there are an awful lot in New Zealand. What I try to drum into them is that as the director, you are in charge of setting all up the systems and the processes and the governance for the business. So really the buck stops with you. I'm thinking about Chris was just talking about for health and safety. It's about making sure those processes are in place so that the employees can use them, and asking management to put them in place and checking on that. That is your role as a director. And I've worked with a lot of businesses on producing sort of a risk register. And people sort of think risk register, oh no, that's sort of an admin side of thing. It's actually not. It gives you a chance to really think about all the different moving parts of the business and what risks the business might face. And that could be for things like customers and sales as well, to see how exposed you are in particular areas and what would happen if this happened. And it can actually make your business a lot more resilient and help the directors set that strategy.
Yeah, look, it's really interesting just you know, trying to even get people on that journey, right? You know, just to get them to understand those obligations but practicing it, not just you know, saying I'm going to do it. It's in the practical aspect of it. Cora, you talk about you both talk about steep learning curve for you as a director. What has been the steepest learning curve for you as a director in a high risk industry?
I guess like, you know, financial reporting and accountability to the board,
Yeah.
which is, so we also work within the company, but we are also part of the board, but it's giving that that information to the board and presenting it in a way that can be read. And also just, so previously we did have an accountant, but then Catherine introduced me to Cora. And like even my knowledge there, just growing with Cora has been so much more, and I'm understanding so much more within the business and the financials as well. And just keeping an eye on the performances and where our losses are occurring, where we're making money and things like that. And also like risk management too in your decision making. So, and I guess accounting for that in the financials as well, you know, that was never really done in the past. But yeah, it's just a whole new learning curve, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I love how courageous you are, because coming on something like this and talking about your business, it's got to be real, and it's got to be where you're at, which is where most businesses are at. And so when you talk about losses, it's really about seeing where some bleeds might happen and stop them before they become a massive problem. And that's what's really been, you know, when you were able to go back to the board and say just how instrumental having that support from Cora and myself has helped the bottom line, not necessarily from what we've done, but from your understanding in terms of what you need to be doing and just really looking closely more at those numbers. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. And getting like within myself new capabilities, I guess, that I never had before.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, there'll be plenty more that you'll learn, that's for sure. Chris, we talked about you being able to sleep better and your client being able to sleep better. You know, can you just expand on this for you, what it means for you around being able to sleep better?
It's so with the sleeping better, it's making sure that the health and safety and everything is covered and set and passed on to the client so they can sleep happier, and it also helps us sleep happier as directors, that the health and safety, everything's covered on site. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just a huge relief to go to bed and that you know that the people and your workers are safe and working on site.
Absolutely, and I guess it's also really around, I mean, that's got to be the top priority. And we were talking on site yesterday and the day before with the workers about how important it is for us that people come to work and go home happy, firstly, and secondly, with all the limbs that they arrived at work with and not have injuries or any other situations happening. But you know, that comes with a great deal of personal liability for you as directors. I mean, you've really got everything on the line, not just from a financial point of view, but your brand, you know, your personal brand. You know, if something happened, you know, that's the thing that really affected. I mean, financial is one thing, but your personal brand in terms of where to next and how credible am I going to be, you know? So Chris, in terms of relying on professional advice, how do you find the right people to help you?
Well, they're pretty much sitting in the room, so we found them. Yeah, it's just trust and sharing and everything like that, and it's hard, and trying to find, you know, directors with the same, who want the same structure and same the same amount of what they want for the company, and of also the shouldering and of course helping Cora with the lack of sleep that she was having because everything was mounted on top of her at the beginning. So with me also stepping back in, it's taking all that load off her. So I guess I'm hoping she's sleeping better as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a bit debatable because Cora does have a 4-year-old, so I'm sure that her sleep is still a little bit broken with the lovely bonus of illnesses that come from kindy and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was really important that we put that structure in place, because as we find typical in most family businesses, if there's a number of people involved, generally one person is shouldering all of that responsibility, and it's understanding what is my role and what is the role of other people, and you know, making sure we stay in our lane. Andrew, I'm going to come back to you. Let's talk about the law. And what are the requirements of a director of a business as far as the law is concerned? I know, Andrew, we can go to chat AI and get a whole bunch of different interpretations, but nothing beats the experience on the ground. So what are the responsibilities of a director in New Zealand for a business?
Yeah, so directors have a pretty special responsibility under the law. They're in a fiduciary relationship, so they've got to act the best interests of the company and in good faith. So those are sort of the fundamental kind of duties of a director set out in the Companies Act. And I don't think they're probably widely understood or necessarily followed in all cases. But aside from sort of the more generalized duties in the Companies Act, you've got specific duties within parts of legislation as well. And in particular, we've talked already a bit about health and safety, and that's a really important one that was brought in a few years ago, especially in the construction industry. You know, back under the old Act, directors were sort of almost incentivized not to get too involved in the business, because once they knew something was wrong, that was when the liability would kick in. And so there was almost this sort of incentive not to get too involved. That's all changed with the new Act. You have to get involved, you have to understand the risks, and if you don't set up the right systems and processes, there is the potential for personal liability. And there's other statutes as well that have the potential personal liability, like the Commerce Act and competition law. So look, it's a big role and it's not to be undertaken lightly. And I've just been really impressed with these guys in terms of their desire to put the right systems and processes in place, get the right advice. I've been lucky enough to attend one of their board meetings, and it's really good to see it all happening in action.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the law's been around since 1992. Well, the update of the law, I should say. The law's been around longer than that, but in terms of an update, and it probably needs a real overhaul and review anyway, because you know, we're now, you know, nearly 2024 next year. You know, there's been a whole couple of decades and more in between. Well, probably 30 decades, I should say, in between. And I still think it's just so easy to start up a business without actually having that compliance piece before you go into business. I mean, I talk about compliance and due diligence, I should say. You know, you go and buy a house, for example, and you know, you go get a builder's report, and you get a valuation, and you get all the other things that go with it, and then the bank's looking at whether you can service them, a whole bunch of things. But you know, too easy. You go to the company's office and set up a company, and boom, you're on, you know. And so we can talk about that. You know, what do you see, Andrew, as being the main areas of concern that directors don't abide by in general? I mean, there's news flashes everywhere, every day about something, and you go, that was avoidable. But from your perspective?
Yeah, look, I think that's a really interesting area. Probably the biggest thing I see, because we do have this prevalence of a lot of smaller businesses in New Zealand, is just directors not appreciating the difference between their own personal interests and the company's interests. And, you know, I've got, you know, thinking about some examples, I've had a client in the past that uncovered that a former director was taking sort of rebates and things on the side for business activities and wasn't disclosing that to the company. And when challenged on that, the response was sort of almost like, what do you mean? What's the problem? You know, it's just that kind of understanding your role, understanding that you've got to act in the best interests of the company, and that if something does bubble up and get uncovered, there will be a problem for you.
Yeah, look, there's so much information online, and there's professional assistance with people like yourself. There's also the Institute of Directors. They've got courses you can do online, as well as obviously go and do them in person, which is going to give you other directors in the room that you can kind of use as bouncing off and forming really solid relationships with. But yeah, it's really interesting, the not understanding the difference between operational and governance, you know, and blurring those lines. And especially in family businesses or businesses where people are friends, you know, understanding that, you know, you've got a level playing field that you're bringing other people into that business, and you've got to operate at a level that is the same for everybody, you know, no favoritism, no bias or anything like that. So yeah, it's
And one of the things to help with that too is that you do have a lot of these businesses like Steelpac where you're sort of in the business and expected to be a director as well. And what New Zealand businesses aren't good at is having an independent director or someone external who can come to those board meetings and kind of give that view from outside the business that everyone can kind of think about. And I think that's one area that would really lift a lot of boardrooms in New Zealand, as if people, and it doesn't have to be expensive, you know, people are out there and willing to be help. And I just think that that's one key area where New Zealand businesses could grow, is to bring in that independent view.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Andrew, are these issues that the main concerns are they issues that are just exclusive to New Zealand, or is this director behaviour worldwide? Like,
oh, no, it's not just a New Zealand thing. I mean, a lot of these duties are in a lot of other jurisdictions, and a lot of these issues are also in other jurisdictions. Probably, though, as I sort of said, it's maybe a bit more highlighted here because we do have this strong prevalence of smaller businesses where people are in the business and expected to be directors as well, and so we haven't got necessarily that separation, but no, it's widespread.
yeah, separation and discipline, right? You've got to actually have the discipline to be able to put the two areas into different baskets and be disciplined to ensure that you are operating at that governance level and having that discipline to have that time to do it right. And then coming out and then looking over the top. So all really good advice there. And so Cora, back to you. What's the typical governance structure your company has adopted through my guidance?
So we started off with monthly meetings, and we've now shifted into bi-monthly board meetings. We also send out an agenda before the meeting and get feedback from the other directors if they want to add to that agenda. And it gets everyone participating before the meeting as well. And also Chris and I work inside the business, so we've also got to produce our reports to present to the board at these board meetings to give them the information that they need to make decisions.
And I guess it comes down to accountability, right? Because the board will set a mandate in terms of the strategic direction of where that business is going, and you've been appointed in those roles, which could be actually outsourced to other people. And so it also comes down to accountability, performance measurements, and where do we need to bridge gaps rather than just allowing things to kind of go month by month by month, and then suddenly we realize we've got a problem over here and this person doesn't have the capability. So it gives you the opportunity to get feedback and the visibility to give the stakeholders that comfort and confidence that you're doing what's being required of you, and so that making the family feel a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
That's good. So Andrew, why is it so easy to become a director of a company owner, and what are your views, if you had your way, to limit this easy setting up of companies in New Zealand?
Well, it's New Zealand, we're easy to do business. I mean, we're kind of known for that. So I mean, there are some restrictions now on who can be a director in terms of needing to at least have one director who's New Zealand or Australian based. But for me, I'm not necessarily so concerned about being able to become a director. Where I think we fall down a bit, though, is where businesses have failed. I still think it's too easy for directors to then start up new businesses again. And I don't think there's enough of a deterrent there. And I'm sort of thinking there are some rules around if there's serious breaches and of duties, then directors can be, or if they're prosecuted of something, and they can be, not be able to be director of a company for a period. I think we need to tighten those up. And I think there should be some stand down. If your business that you're in becomes insolvent or goes into liquidation, then you need to have a period where you've got to stop and go and get some training before you can come back on again. It's too easy just to set up, go again,
Yeah, look, I mean, we're talking today about directors of companies. I mean, there's obviously also directors that come on the board and, they bring that expertise. And I think that's a whole nother topic that you, Cora, and I could explore on another LinkedIn Live, because, just the frustration of people joining boards and they've got no added value to the table is just, you know, it's kind of why I pulled myself off boards there for a while, and I just got so disillusioned by why people were there and just their agenda rather than the right agenda for being there in terms of what that business or that not-for-profit organisation or that franchise needed, you know. So yeah, that's a whole topic for another day. So Chris, I'm going to come back to you. I mean, every day, and we talk about this often, these devastating avoidable accidents in the workplace, and I couldn't think of anything more worse than explaining to someone's family they're not coming home or that there's been a life-changing accident at work. Can you give me an example of the things that you discuss in your toolboxes or your workplace?
Yeah, so we do a lot of talking about tools, machinery, potential dangers coming up on the work site scheduling. We've also implemented a stretching of the muscles and stuff. You know, before work, rather during work, to stretch out their muscles so we get lesser ACC claims and stuff like that for sore muscles and strains and stuff like that. Also implemented volatile weather conditions as well, keeping our workers safe in those conditions, extreme heat and also extreme cold and weather conditions. And also mental wellness, because as blokes, you know, we don't like talking. So we try and introduce that into the work site and try and get everyone talking about it. And if they have got problems, they just talk to someone on site and get it known. Yeah,
and yesterday was really special actually because we had a great deal more participation on one of our sites where, you know, it's about having courageous conversations. Like a lot of people still have that fear, and especially guys, when you're on site with a lot of people, especially in a remote area like a farm, you don't want to be that guy that goes, oh, put my hand up and I'm saying this is happening. But actually you do want to be that guy, because if you're not that guy, then nothing will change, and then that's when you see people leaving and the accidents happening. And when they leave, for example, let's not talk about accidents happening, but they leave knowing that, you know, the values of that organisation are not aligned with, you know, what we write and what we do in terms of practice are very, very different. So, Chris, how has the engine helped you be a better director?
Catherine basically helped me through everything. Because I didn't really know how to be a director in the start. So it is hard separating. So you've got your work, your business director, and you've got family. So it's dividing all three up, and keeping them all separate as a director.
Yeah, and just really being able to come out and hover above your business side and see things differently.
Yeah.
And Chris has got a really standard sentence he uses quite a lot. When I say quite a lot, he's learning and evolving, and he says, you know, yeah, no, I need to know that it's a learning, it's an opportunity, and you say it quite often. And if he's leading by example and he's telling the team that, then they're going to lead by example as well in terms of other people, and it's just spreading that. So it's important to have the right people and skill you need at the table. So Cora, what about you? How's the engine helped you be a better director?
Well, Catherine suggested shareholders agreements and memorandums of understanding. So as directors, we all had agreement around what the end game was, along with building of the value proposition and what that meant from an agreement of time, effort and money. Andrew has also worked well with us to put this in place for the benefit of the company, so in the best interest of the company, which ultimately safeguards the company for its employees, clients and stakeholders. Yeah.
And Andrew's had to, you know, obviously there's one suggestion of what we need, but it's then understanding what does that mean for us. It's the whole learning thing. And so Andrew, you've had to kind of bring into the conversation, you know, not just what is a shareholders agreement, but where are you each individually going, and what are you each wanting out of this to make sure there's the alignment. So what sort of changes have you seen with the directors of Steelpac Construction Group Limited since I introduced them to you, Andrew?
Oh, look, it's been great to see what's been happening with the business. I mean, I have acted for the company, and we have put in place the shareholders agreement, which puts in the framework for governance and decision making, and who's going to be on the board and how that works, and then what decisions the board can make and what decisions they need to check with the shareholders to make, and all that sort of process is in there now. So it gives them a lot of comfort going forward, that everyone kind of knows the rules, I guess, if you like, and knows when they'll be consulted and when not. So it puts power into the board. Board can know they can act unless there's a particular reserved matter. They can do things, which I think is really good. As I said, I was lucky enough to attend a board meeting, and they had a great agenda, they had a great structure. They went through all the key areas: finances, health and safety, sales, and it's just stopping and talking through each of those, any sort of issues, where are we going well, what can we improve. It's just been really positive.
Yeah, look, directors, they've got to bring a wealth of experience, oversight and guidance to business, and sometimes they don't have that, and you wouldn't have it on day dot. And if you actually have the right people around you that can actually guide you and bring about that experience, it's going to lead to better contribution and improved decision making, effective risk management, stakeholder engagement, long-term sustainability. And especially in the construction industry, it's really tough. You've got a lot of different moving parts that are happening. You've got your compliance, and then you've got labour shortages, and then you've got cost rising. So many things that are happening. So ultimately you're looking at the performance and the success of the business. So I'm going to use a bit of an analogy here. Obviously we talk about having a director of a film, and that's the captain of the ship. But a business also needs the captain, and so I use the 3 C's. So directors, in my view, they got to be caring, and they got to be courageous, and they got to be consistent. So caring in terms of putting the success of the team ahead of their own, and being passionate about the business and well-being of all within it. That can be really tough when people have this mindset of it's got to be about me. And we talked about that yesterday, just as a reminder of, in fact, one of the guys on one of the site supervisors, he used the Martin Luther King statement about, helping your staff before you help others. And I said to him, it's exactly the same analogy as, as I say, put your mask on first and then you can help others. But there's plenty of people out there that put their mask on and then they just wait for everything to happen around them. So you can't change the dynamic of those people. But when you're in the seat of being a director or a CEO, in terms of obviously working in the trenches as opposed to, obviously being above level and governance, it's really important that you actually do lead by example. So courageous, being able to step up and walk the talk, as I say, and set the example and trust your team and hold them and their team to being accountable. But you've got to be accountable too, I say to employees as I'm doing business continuity planning, go back and ask your directors what insurance they've got in place. Should they have a heart attack, or should they burn out? If they got key person insurance, because employees need confidence, and so you've got to be able to be courageous and be able to set the example, and then be consistent. Is what being true to your style. So the 4C is credibility. Nothing is more important than being seen as being authentic and credible. And that's a really important thing that ties back to the very beginning of what I was saying about, lots of stuff happening in the news out there. So you don't want to have yourself in there. Although some people, and even me included, would say there's bad PR that's good PR. So it just depends on how you approach it and front up to it. So to start with you first, Andrew. Let's talk about being consistent. What does that look like from your perspective as a director?
Yeah, for me, consistency sort of links back into that duty about the best interests of the company, putting the company forward first always in what you do and being consistent within that. I think that's a really a good value to lead by. That includes putting in place the right systems and processes so that employees feel as though there is a plan, there is a system. We're not just making this up day to day. So for me, that's what consistency means in the business.
Cool. And Cora, appropriately, caring. Let's talk about caring.
So it's caring for your people, and it's actually understanding them and what they're going through, and And caring about their success is the big thing, you know, you want them to strive in your business, you want them to succeed in the business. Yeah.
And I'm left courageous for you, Chris, because that's the hard one. You've been one of the boys on the tool. And now, you know, you're at a different level. So, you know, and doing things that just don't feel natural for you. Like, you know, you're used to talking to people, you're used to having a hammer and power tools, and now you got to talk a different language. So how can you be courageous in the doing?
Courageous is if you don't know what you don't know, ask the people around you to help. The people that you brought in, Catherine, Andrew, you ask them for their advice, ask them for everything. Yeah, they're there on hand to use.
Awesome. So let's close this up. Closing remarks. We've covered off a lot today. I want a top tip from each of you. So back to you, Chris. Let's start with you. What's a top tip for you as a director?
Understand your responsibilities. If you can't afford to lose it, de-risk it.
Wow, that's powerful, right?
Yeah.
So Cora?
To seek professional advice and guidance, it's worth every cent. Catherine and her provider network within the engine have helped our business tremendously. Yeah. Okay, from where we were a year ago to now, massive improvements.
Absolutely. I still hear from Cora a lot, but not as much as it was over a year ago. And you know, she had it coming from all angles, and now she knows that you can take a pause back, right? And just you don't have to jump into something. When you jump into something, it's reactive. So step back, take a pause, get the right advice from the right people, or take your thought process to those people and get their thoughts around it. But Andrew, what about you? A top tip from you as a director?
Top tip from me is to absolutely make that time to have a board meetings regularly. Make sure they are actually board meetings and that you've got an agenda that you work towards. Look, we do it in my own business here. We have them every 2 months and we bring in someone external for that. So every business can benefit from that. And if you need some external people on that board to come in and give you some advice, don't be afraid to do that. I think everyone will find it really valuable.
Thank you, Andrew. So what a session. Thank you everybody for being here today. You know, being a director requires continuous learning, adaptability, and a commitment to the best interests of the company and its stakeholders. You've got to act with integrity, embrace ethical conduct, and strive to make a positive impact on the organisation's success and long-term sustainability. We've covered off a lot today. My next session is I'm inviting all CEOs to come and watch. We're talking about Dear CEO, and we're talking about where are you at yourselves? You know, are you burnt out? Do you need a break? And what does that look like? And Andrew, I'm going to come back to you and Cora. I think we really need to pick up a session just talking about being, you know, a director invited to a board and being there for the right reason with the right experience. So, hey, thank you, Andrew. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks all.
All right, take care now. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
So yeah.